and someone give you a fiver, that would set you up for so much.
Who's this someone? It depends who's giving me the fiver.
I'm not talking about you getting groomed. I mean,
Well, you said someone's giving you a fiver. I used to walk home from school and go to the chip shop on a Friday. If a random stranger went, "Here's a fiver," I'd be like, "Perfect, I can get the chips and gravy." Learning, and after 13 years in government, you think that the Conservative Party would have learnt how to run the country. Callum, have they learnt yet?
Hi, Callum Scott here, Bedlam reporter, who was Forest Stage live from the Conservative Party conference here in Manchester, where I currently am right now.
Brilliant.
No.
Fantastic. Proud.
No, they haven't.
They haven't learnt. Hello and welcome to the Bedlam Podcast. I'm here as always to just make sure my background hasn't loaded up. Great, thanks guys. Love it. Is it going to break it? Oh, your back. Oh, it doesn't support this feature to say that I had this feature on already. Oh well. Hi, I'm Tom. As you can see, but this side here, my. Okay. Hi, Callum.
Hi.
This is not working, is it?
What a joke.
This is horrendous.
What a joke.
Right, let's see if this works. Right. So
Your outfit. It's not serious, this. I'm so done.
So we need to see if this will load in without killing my computer. Oh, it does. Hey. And now let's see if this will load in without killing the computer.
You get all the sneak previews. Oh, look,
fantastic.
Is there a way of
it's
doing
almost
that
like.
Is there a way of doing that without showing everyone?
Is there a way of doing that without killing the computer? Oh, I don't know.
Try it. We'll find out.
So, if you would have seen like the live stream that we done the other week, you would have seen what goes on in the background of starting up the Bedlam podcast, and it's quite horrendous and it's quite funny. But you know, we live, we learn, and we don't really learn, and we just keep going. And yeah,
we just live.
14 years of that, so yeah,
we just live life. That's all we're here to do.
So as I was saying, welcome to the Bedlam podcast. Cause of chaos and confusion, and we are here as always with Mr. Callum Scott. We don't have no big massive speech today. Nothing in the in the limelight there for me. So we've just got things that we've just planned in the background and just got on with it.
There's nothing really going on in the world, is there? To be honest with you.
No, absolutely not. So the last time we saw us, it was for the announcement of, well, not the announcement. It was the what is it? The exit polls, and it was the first 2 hours of us just chatting utter bollocks. Yeah, we've got no banners loaded up, so we've still got the tickers from predicted for 410 seats.
Guess what? That prediction, it came true.
Yeah, I know. I've still got this one, to be fair, as I was updating, like from the first couple of seats that were announced that when we're still live. And then we both went, right, too knackered now. Right. Too knackered. But yeah, so you went off and did some other stuff. So you did some radio and stuff like that. How did that go?
It was good. It went off without a hitch, thank God. And at that time, you can tell my voice gets progressively more grovelly and like deeper because I'm just tired all the time. And I didn't end up going to bed properly until 8 p.m. Friday night.
Nice. I was a bit knackered. I was told by the other half that I wasn't allowed to be tired, and I just got on with the day. Even though I was knackered, and I was just like, I really wish I could go to sleep right now, but it's not going to happen, is it?
You're not allowed to be tired. It's not on.
I nearly fell at me.
Oh, God.
What? But yeah, so we've got a little bit of stuff to talk about. We're going to do a final bit on politics. Yes, for the people that are not bothered about politics, we're finally finishing because it's no longer a thing of the news. We will come back, touch base, stuff like that every so often. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go over the government. We're going to go over the cabinet of the roles that they've got, roles that they may have axed from Rishi Sunak and stuff like that. I think we were going about it in beforehand, and there was quite a few things that have been taken out and basically just made a little bit more simpler. But then we're also going to go over, so we've got the 6 first steps of what the government are going to do. We have a little bit of stuff from when they were going over the manifesto and what they were going to do to get Britain's future back. And see what is still in the pipeline, what's not in the pipeline, and we're just going to go over it. And then we've got a little bit of newsy things towards the end as well. Yes, okay, it's still a little bit of politics, but it's in the news right now, and that's what we're all about. So,
yeah, that's what we're all about.
This man here, a great landslide for Labour, and they finally got back into government after 14 years. So, Sir Keir Starmer there with his good wife stood outside the door of 10 Downing Street. And one thing that I was one thing that I'd found that was quite, I don't know, a handful bit of knowledge.
Go on.
10 Downing Street doesn't have a door lock on it.
No, because there's always somebody behind it.
I thought that was interesting, and there's cameras and everything.
Yeah. It's like I was just going to say, I never knew how they knew to open the door, because they always open it just when someone's walking up to it. And I'm like, how do they know when someone's walking up to it? Turns out where that lamp is, just above his head, there's a camera pointing down so they can see when somebody's at the door, so they can open it.
But you always see that video that comes up of Larry the cat. Is it Larry?
Yeah.
And where he's just sat at the door, and he's just sat outside it, and he's like trying to get in, and then all of a sudden the copper comes over and knocks on the door, and like a guy comes out and like looks left and right, and the cat just walks in.
Yeah, so that happens sometimes. But what was funny on that day where the changeover of power, the transfer of power happened, was that there was a bit where Larry was just sat outside and they thought he wanted to come in. So they opened the door and he just stays there. Just doesn't move. The door's open. Like, you can't see anyone on the other side, but Larry's just sat there just like, what?
But he's got really confused because there's loads of people that he's never seen before of walking into his house, and it's just like, who the hell are you?
Who are you? Who are you guys?
So we have Keir Starmer, who is the new Prime Minister, and his deputy is the person that's been by his side all the way through it, is the Right Honourable Angela Rayner MP. She has been appointed as Deputy Prime Minister, so she'll step in when the Prime Minister is on his deathbed or just out of the country or whatever. And she's also the Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities. Why is this a good appointment?
She's the first housing secretary in history to have lived in social housing, like council housing. So that's good for the normal people of this world. Also, she's going to be a good deputy prime minister, and the same can be said for all of the cabinet appointments, because basically what Keir Starmer's done, and this is quite rare, is that everybody that was in his shadow cabinet and all the jobs that they have essentially just moved into the cabinet. No one's changed jobs. No one's been given a new job that they weren't expecting. Everybody in the cabinet has been shadowing the role that they are currently doing for as long as they have been in the shadow cabinet.
Isn't there one person that hasn't, and she was the one that has served under Tony Blair?
It was, what's her name? Bloody Emily Thornberry was expected to get Attorney General, and she didn't get it. For bants, essentially.
So, jumping the gun, Yvette Cooper, was she on the shadow?
Yvette Cooper, oh God, you're asking me now. You're asking me questions.
I don't think she was on the shadow. I don't think she was on the shadow side.
Yvette Cooper. Oh,
She's
oh
cut him
no.
out again, haven't I?
Yvette Cooper.
Cut him out. This isn't doing good, is it? This is not doing your reputation any good, is it, Callum?
No, is it? I'm trying to think of what she was. She was good. I think she was Shadow.
Shadow.
She.
Hang on, let's have a quick look.
Hang on a minute. Hold on.
Because I know that she did the job under Tony Blair.
So under Tony Blair, under Gordon Brown, she was the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions.
Ah, she was the Starmer Shadow Cabinet.
Yeah, she was the Shadow Home Secretary. Yeah.
She's reappointed as Shadow Home Secretary on the 29th of November, 2021. All right, okay, fair enough. Right, I'll shut up then.
She was also a Shadow Minister for Women and Equalities, which is the job that Annalise Dodds is now doing.
Mm-hmm. So the next person, she is the Right Honourable Rachel Reeves MP. The first female Chancellor of the Exchequer. And she's the one that's going to live next door to Keir Starmer in number 11. And yeah, she's going to be the one that holds that red briefcase up outside Downing Street and does all the money things and stuff like that.
All of the budgets. And it's worth sort of commenting that people think that the Prime Minister works closest with the Deputy Prime Minister, but that's not the case. Prime Minister always works closely or closest with the Chancellor. And if the relationship between the Chancellor and the Prime Minister is good, things are normally good. If the relationship between the Chancellor and the Prime Minister is bad, things normally start to fall fairly quickly after that. Look at Rishi and Boris Johnson. When Rishi resigned, that was the day when everything started to fall apart. But historically, you've had really strong relationships between number 11 Downing Street and number 10, like Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, David Cameron, George Osborne. I can't remember who John Majors was, but you've always had really good relationships normally with the Chancellor, which is what this is, because they work fabulously together.
So the next one is the Right Honourable Pat McFadden, and he has been appointed the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster.
Yeah, a bit of a nothing role, to be honest with you. Don't really do much in terms of day-to-day governance. This isn't massive.
So what does the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster do?
Essentially, the Duchy of Lancaster is quite a lot of public money and land tied up in old royal registries, and you need a Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, but that won't be his only job. He will also sort of jump across different departments should they need advice or whatever, which is always why it tends to go to an experienced head. You know, Pat McFadden served in Tony Blair's cabinet as well. So in terms of people with experience in a Labour government, you can't get much more experience than Pat McFadden at the moment, because if you did, you'd have to go right back to Harold Wilson's government.
So he basically just looks after fields.
If we're going off that job description, then yeah, pretty much.
Right. Okay, I'm just trying to dumb it down for the dumb people over here.
Okay.
The next person, a notable face that's been all over TV and all over radio. He left his job at LBC to take up the shadow role of this, and it's the Right Honourable David Lammy who takes up the Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs.
Yeah, strong appointment. You know, like I said, David Lammy's been shadowing this job for a long time. He knows what he's doing. Sensible, calm head on the international stage, which is what we need right now. And, you know, this is one of the departments that needs to hit the ground running. And they've certainly done that. You know, David Lammy's been, he's currently in Israel, and he's called for a ceasefire while he's there, which is a pretty ballsy thing to do at the minute. So, he's hitting the ground running in terms of getting his policy implemented. And yeah, I think it's a strong appointment. I think he'll do well in the role. And historically, looking at the foreign secretaries we've had, Boris Johnson was foreign secretary under Theresa May, and then was subsequently sacked for constantly making inappropriate comments about certain things wherever he went. So yeah, the only way is up, people. The only way is up.
The next person, so we spoke about her a little bit, is the Yvette Cooper. She is the Secretary of State for the Home Department. So that's looking at the affairs that happen here on the sea, trying to get into the country and things like that. And in her first sort of little conference thing that she said, this is what she had to say.
Dangerous boat crossings that are undermining our border security and putting lives at risk, and they are getting away with it. So I have immediately started work on a major upgrade in law enforcement, including the process to recruit a new border security commander, new cross-border police to go after the criminal gangs.
So she's getting the ball rolling pretty quickly with trying to stop those boats getting into the UK, and basically targeting those criminal gangs is what we need to do.
That was Labour's policy sort of throughout the election campaign. Their sort of hitting point against the Rwanda scheme was that you're not actually solving the problem with that. You're just moving the problem to a different country, whereas going after the gangs that are trafficking these people across the channel and promising them safe passage and living in the UK, going after those will be a better way of dealing with the problem. And the Labour plan for that is to set up this British Border Command, or whatever it's called, which will essentially operate as a department within a department. Will receive funding from the Home Office, but will operate probably independent of the Home Office, in that it won't have to go through the Ministers of State to get through what it needs to get through.
So we have got a little bit of James Cleverly coming through. So after it was all announced and the fire had sort of died down a little bit, James Cleverly is basically saying that as Home Secretary, which is basically what this role is, he said that I changed the rules to deliver the largest ever cut to migration. Today, we've seen those changes deliver another fall in visa applications, down 48% compared to June last year. We're on the right path, but we can't let Labour squander our progress. So far, they've scrapped the Rwanda deterrent, opening the doors for people smugglers and asylum seekers who said that they were hoping for a Labour government. They've given an effective amnesty to 100,000 illegal immigrants, and now they're looking to cut a deal with the EU, which could mean the UK taking a quota of migrants from Europe. As Home Secretary, I worked relentlessly to get a grip on migration as Shadow Home Secretary, and I will do the same to hold the Labour government to account. Well, that's kind of the same thing as what the majority of the Conservatives who hold the shadow role are saying, that they're going to hold the Labour government to account because they believe that they were doing a quite good job while they're in government.
Well, that's sort of what they have to say, because they're not in a position to challenge the Labour government because of the absolute decimation in terms of numbers at the election. They're not in a position to challenge Labour on legislation. If Labour wants to put legislation to the House of Commons, it's more than likely going to pass. Just like we saw when the Rwanda bill was going through Parliament, it would pass and the no's would get more and more, but there would still be enough eyes to the right to pass it through the House of Commons. That's pretty much what we're going to see with Labour, because they've got that many MPs that all of the other side of the House combined would not be enough to stop if every Labour MP voted for something.
Yeah. And you've also got to remember that it goes through the Commons, and then it gets put to the House of Lords. But with the House of Lords being predominantly Labour, then it's not going to really face a challenge getting through there as well. So where it was much harder for Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson, Theresa May, and so on, we're struggling to get things through, is because it kept failing in the Lords and it kept getting thrown back into the Commons, and they had to keep changing it a little bit so they could try and get that through with all the eyes to the right. So the next one is John Healey, and he's the Secretary of State for Defence.
Yeah, John Healey, good MP. He's been at this a long time in terms of what he's been doing. Again, been doing this role in shadow for a long time, but was first elected under Tony Blair in 1997. He served in Gordon Brown's cabinet in various different roles. He served in Tony Blair's last cabinet. He didn't serve in his first one. He served in his second and his third as an undersecretary in education, an economic secretary, and then he moved on to minister within the Department of Education and Local Government and Housing, and then took up the role of the Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, which he's held since Keir Starmer was appointed leader of the Labour Party in 2020.
Perfect. So keeping his job there, as Callum said, most of the Shadow Cabinet did. But yeah, important role with everything that's going on at the moment, as we say, with Israel, Ukraine, and basically just making sure that our own borders and our own defence are secure, just in case of anyone decide to invade, basically.
He's another one that's hit the ground running. His first trip was to Ukraine, where he had to hide in a bomb shelter, as it was the same weekend that Russia decided it wanted to bomb Kyiv. And they hit that children's hospital, but that was the same time that the new defense secretary was meeting Zelensky for the first time in person. So, not wasting any time. He's been in the role for 10 days and already he's made his first visit to Ukraine, and I believe was at the NATO summit with Keir Starmer as well.
Yeah, I think David Lammy was there as well, wasn't he? Yeah. Right, so the next one is Shabana Mahmood. Shabana? Have I said that right?
Shabana.
She's the Lord Chancellor and Secretary of State for Justice, so courts, I'm guessing.
And prisons.
Courts and prisons.
We're
lovely.
Talking a lot about prisons, because Labour's one of their first things that they're going to have to do is release upwards of 20,000 prisoners to ease the prison overcrowding crisis that's currently ongoing. The levels of prisoners versus places for prisoners is the closest to being bang on that it's been ever. So we are nearly at maximum capacity in terms of prisoners in the UK. So she will be the one that is the face of that new piece of legislation to release prisoners, I think, that have 20% of their tariff left to serve.
Yeah.
And obviously certain crimes are exempt. I think murder, rape, and crimes that carry a whole life tariff will be exempt from this legislation. But that's her first job, and they've been trying, you can tell they've been trying to figure out how to get this right, because they have to get it right. Obvious own goal here would be release the prisoner goes on to reoffend. The policy is then blamed because that prisoner should have been in prison.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a difficult job of basically, it's like having 5 people in front of you and just trying to pick out who the better one is. But, if you've been good in prison and you've not done a massive crime, I don't know, you stole a couple of CDs off a car boot or something like that.
Exactly. And it is worth noting that this is her first role in terms of an actual cabinet job. She's been within the shadow cabinet of Gordon Brown and Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer, but always in sort of low-level roles. So she was the national campaign coordinator for the Labour Party, essentially not being on the front benches of the opposition, but running the election campaigns, all the promotional material, things like that. And then she was Shadow Minister in the Treasury, the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, and then she was the Shadow Secretary of State for Justice. And then she was the Justice Secretary.
Fantastic. Next person, Wes Streeting. Lucky to keep hold of his seat, but he is, he kept his seat by the skin of his teeth, and Secretary of State for Health and Social Care.
Yeah. I'm actually listening to his book at the minute. It's very good. Highly recommend it. But, one of the most important jobs in the cabinet is the health secretary, one of the hardest jobs as well. But again, I keep saying it, hit the ground running. Labour said that they would meet to end the junior doctors' strike on day one. The junior doctors have now agreed to end their strike, having met Wes Streeting. So,
it's just simple things. It's just so easy to do simple things. And if you're not willing to do simple things, you're not going to get, the outcome that you want.
Well, this is it. Like Rishi Sunak said that they wouldn't negotiate because the terms that they were asking for were unrealistic. Labour always said we have to get around the table and negotiate and see. We will never. We're not going to accept. We're not going to be taken for mugs, essentially. But we will get around the table and negotiate, and they have, and they've come out with a settlement, and the junior doctors are going back to work. So, the power of actually getting on and getting around the negotiating table is clearly stronger than what people would have thought. And it looks really good for him that within 6 days he's managed to quell one of the biggest problems currently facing the Department of Health. He's not done this. He's been the Shadow Secretary of State for Health since 2021, one of the longest serving members of Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet. Before that, he was a minister within the Shadow Department of Education, and he was the Shadow Secretary of State for Child Poverty, which is a position that doesn't exist anymore. But that is also why you're going to see a lot of comments on the 2-child benefit cap, whether to scrap it, whether to not. That's something that he wants to scrap it, but he's been very clear and said we're not sure whether financially we're in a position to be able to do that yet, but we will do when we can.
Yeah, fair enough. So the next person, I think another person that scraped a seat.
I'm not sure, I think she did okay.
So it is Bridget Phillipson.
Yeah.
She's the Secretary of State for Education.
Bridget Phillipson is Sunderland South. So
yes, of course it was.
She was the first Labour frontbencher to get her result through. But yeah, so she's been given education, having and again shadowed education for a similar amount of time that Wes Streeting's shadowed health. Before that, she was an opposition whip under Gordon Brown and Miliband. Don't know why I said it like that. And then she was the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, which is a little bit of a non-job again. But she only did that for a year. And then she was appointed on that cabinet reshuffle when Keir Starmer was appointed as the Secretary of State for Education. So I think she's got a tough job. But as we'll come on to later on, there are policies that she is getting on with or trying to get some leeway from the new Chancellor in terms of give me some money, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, I think all of them at the moment have got quite a hard job on of trying to find where that money is and trying to put it into the policies that where they want, basically.
Yeah,
And
true.
one of her jobs is to try and find the money. And one of the policies that we're going to talk about later is to try and find that money.
Indeed.
So the next one is Ed Miliband. He is the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero. Was this the one where the job description was a little bit like, huh?
Yeah, so this is the one where essentially he does have a job, right? But basically his job is to be the face of Great British Energy, this new Labour initiative to get your bills down and basically invest in onshore and offshore wind power. We all know who Ed Miliband is. Bacon sandwich picture, hilarious, very funny. Ha ha ha. Ha ha. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. You know, to explain his parliamentary career would be fairly dull. He was the leader of the Labour Party for 5 years, 2010 to 2015. He's been doing this role for just about a year. Before that, he was Secretary of State for Climate Change and Net Zero. So they've sort of got rid of the climate change element of the role. But energy and climate change is what he's been doing pretty much solidly since 2010. So he knows his brief very well. He knows what needs to happen. And again, I'm going to say it again. What has he done?
Don't know, Callum, what has he done?
He's hit the ground running because on day 2 of being the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero, he lifted the ban on onshore wind farms, which means that we can build wind farms in fields.
In fields?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which means that we can build more wind farms.
I don't know whether that's a good thing or not.
More energy.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing or not.
Why?
I'm against wind farms.
Why?
Because they're an eyesore and they're noisy. They're a noise polluter.
Right. Do you realise that they've lifted the ban on building them? They've not changed all of the regulations as to where they can go. So you're not going to see one. You're not going to see one pop up down Kilner Bank.
I mean, it might make it look a bit better, but
yeah, that's true. But yeah, anyway, Liz Kendall. That's a surprise.
Next one, Liz Kendall, Secretary of State for Work and Pensions.
Yes, Liz Kendall, Leicester West. Well, I was going to say opposite number, lost his seat to an independent in Leicester East. And that was a shock because he was down for a Labour cabinet role, Jonathan Ashworth, and he lost his seat to an independent over Gaza. And that wasn't meant to happen. He was supposed to fit right into a cabinet role. So guess who's come into his job? That's right. It's another MP for Leicester, Liz Kendall.
Is that so they can be like next door to each other and like he can help her out?
I genuinely think it might be that reason. I'm not sure why.
All right, okay. Not much else to say then. No, okay.
Varied career in terms of shadow ministership. Shadow Minister for Health under Miliband. Did that for a year. Then was Shadow Minister for Health again, but for specifically care and older people. Did that for 5 years until 2015, when under Jeremy Corbyn, she wasn't given a job in the shadow cabinet. And then it was Keir Starmer that brought her back as the Shadow Minister for Health and Social Care for 3 years. And then for a year, she's been doing the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, which is what she is now. So all similar background, but also a bit varied. Quite interesting that Jeremy Corbyn didn't want to give her a job in the shadow cabinet, so she didn't have a job.
Fair enough.
Well, didn't have a job she was still an MP, but she didn't have a job in the cabinet.
Next one up is Jonathan Reynolds, and he is the Secretary of State for Business and Trade and President of the Board of Trade.
President of the Board of Trade is quite a old-fashioned sort of job. They don't really do much anymore. But Secretary of State for Business and Trade is important because we need to do lots of business and trade to get the economy moving again.
I thought that the President of the Board of Trade would be an important role.
Sounds good. Yeah, but like attorney, like Paymaster General sounds great. On paper, they don't really do much.
Fair enough. Get paid a lot, though.
Nice. Nice.
Like me, you don't do a right lot and get paid a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Jonathan Reynolds has been an MP since 2010, the 2010 general election. He has been, are you ready for this list? It's long. He was the opposition whip for a year. Then he was a shadow minister for energy and climate change. Then he was the shadow transport minister. Then he was the shadow economic secretary. Then he was the shadow secretary of state for work and pensions. Then he was the shadow secretary of state for business and industrial strategy. Then he was the shadow secretary of state for business and trade, which he has done for a year. And now he is the secretary of state for business and trade.
I'm confused at that because you'd think that he would have a little bit more experience in where he is with business and trade, and the important thing is to try and strike a deal with the EU since we've come out of Brexit and try and get a better deal. Is that not him that would do that?
So that is him that would do that, but it's worth noting that these jobs he's had in the shadow cabinet, he has always been a member of the Business and Trade Committee, as well as being a member of the Business, Innovation and Skills Committee, which basically he's always been involved in sort of the decision making in terms of Labour policy on these sort of matters, although he wasn't the Shadow Secretary of State for that area. So he's always been involved. So he knows what he's doing.
Okay. That's all right then. I think I mean, I don't have a say, do I? So that'll do.
Well, yeah, no, I mean,
So next one is Peter Kyle, who is the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology. I'm going to just put my £2 worth in here. And this is going to be quite an important role, I am guessing, because of the privatisation of a lot of the space industries now. It's going to be probably potentially quite a big role for him because there's a space centre being opened up or being built up in Scotland. And if we want to join the space race and challenge Elon Musk and his pesky SpaceX rockets, we've got some competing to do there. There's no more Russia, I'd say, because they used to launch theirs from Kazakhstan and stuff like that. So there's room for it at the moment. And I think it's going to be quite a good job for him to have.
I think it's he's done a lot of very important work in terms of the career that he's had in Parliament. He's only been an MP since 2015, but in the time that he's always been given fairly big, fairly important shadow roles. So he's been the Shadow Minister for Justice, he's been the Shadow Minister for Education. Then for 3 years, he was the Shadow Minister for Northern Ireland, which is a massive job, especially given the issues that in the last 4 or 5 years, the Northern Ireland office has had in terms of Sinn Féin becoming the largest party and the DUP having all the problems that they've had, essentially saying we're not going into government with Sinn Féin, we refuse. So there being no government in Northern Ireland. So Peter Kyle had to work with Chris Heaton-Harris, the former Secretary of State, the Conservative Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, to help get that up and running again. So again, an important job that he did very well. And then again, a year ago, he became the Shadow Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology. And I think you're right. I think it's going to be especially at a time like this. It's going to be an important job, and I think he's a good head to have doing it.
I'd just like to apologise for all the headphone you put there.
What?
Because God knows what's just happened, but Carol's just blown my earphones out.
Is it that?
Yep.
Sorry.
My ears just got blown out.
I thought the microphone was up there. I didn't realise it's down there. That's good to
Is it
know.
on your laptop?
Yeah.
Well, you don't have a microphone plugged into it?
No.
Man, that's a bloody good microphone, is that?
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Next, the bright woman that was walking down Downing Street
Fabulous.
is Louise Haig, and she's absolutely got a 10 out of 10 straight away just for the red hair.
Yeah, she's always had bright hair.
She's going straight for it. She's the Secretary of State for Transport, and I've heard that this is a very good appointment as well as.
Yeah, it is, because she's had this job in terms of Shadow Transport Secretary. She's had the job since 2021. So in terms of what she's going to be doing, her big thing is going to be the changes to rail infrastructure, and probably dealing quite a lot like Wes Streeting has had to do, dealing with the RMT, dealing with striking workers. And it's the sort of face that you want in there. It reminds me quite a lot of Tony Blair appointing Mo Mowlam to the Northern Ireland office at the time of the Good Friday Agreement, because you sort of want a no-nonsense head in there to get in, start working, be honest, be frank with the people involved. And that's definitely what you're going to get with her. Yeah,
and she's got a big job as well with basically the railways. The railways are absolutely knackered, on the knees, and it's talking about putting passengers first and establishing great British railways, getting back to where we used to be, where you could just click your finger and there'd be a train on time in front of you, ready to go where everyone needed to go, basically. So fingers crossed.
Bring back football specials.
Next one is Steve Reed, OBE, and he's the Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs.
Steve Reed. That's a name that sounds familiar. It's probably not.
Steve
because he's had...
no. I know where I've heard this before. Primary school, year 4. Steve Reed.
There you go. That's it. That'll be why it's familiar. Yeah. He's had a lot of jobs.
Another one.
He's had a lot of jobs. He's been an MP since 2012. So the beginning of the, well, sort of Millibera, should we call it? And he has had, are you ready for this?
Not really, but go ahead.
Get your fingers out, kids. We're going for it. Shadow Minister for Home Affairs. Shadow Minister for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. Shadow Minister for Communities and Local Government. Shadow Minister for Digital Culture, Media and Sport again. Shadow Minister for Education. Shadow Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government. Shadow Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government again. Shadow Secretary of State for Justice. Shadow Secretary of State for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Done.
I was expecting more.
Steve Reed has been a Reed the Block. Sorry. Really sorry.
Wow. Good appointment, bad appointment?
Good appointment, sensible appointment. He's been around DEFRA for a while. I'm only going to have to explain what DEFRA is.
Yeah, briefly.
DEFRA, Department for Environment, Food, Rural Affairs. DEFRA.
There you go. Perfect.
There you go. He's been around that department, not in terms of the shadow roles he's had. Again, it's a little bit like Peter Kyle and Jonathan Reynolds in that regard. He might not have been the shadow minister, but he's been on the public administration committee for many years and has been on the agricultural committee as well for a long time. So he knows what he's talking about. And although it's not been his brief, I feel confident that he'll know enough to be able to, get into talks with the farmers' unions. And a lot of this will tie into the work of David Lammy as well. And Jonathan Reynolds, in that he will also be looking at like goods tariffs coming from the EU, food quality coming from the EU, things like that. The after effects of Brexit that have just been sort of kicked into the long grass and not really dealt with until now. But it looks like, and I'm hoping, a good appointment.
Do you know, he looks really good, or I think he'll look really good in a white jumpsuit.
What, like a straitjacket, like a prisoner?
No, like a white jumpsuit. You know what they're wearing, like food tech and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. Hairnet, beard snood. Yeah.
He's talking absolute bollocks about meat.
Oh, is that a chicken breast, is it? Oh, wonderful.
Next up, I was surprised by this. I think
my screen's frozen. Tom, my screen's frozen. My screen's frozen, Tom. My computer's frozen. Oh, no.
Oh, no, his whole computer's frozen.
Oh, give me. Wait, it might be coming back. I don't know what's happening. Help. Anyway, continue. Who's next?
Lisa Nandy.
Lisa Nandy, yes.
The Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport.
Great appointment for... Yeah, I fucked that up, didn't I?
Yeah, I think it's going to look really weird because I'm going to be there like...
Balls that right up. Anyway, Lisa Nandy, fabulous appointment for this department. Was a bit of a surprise appointment. She was sort of frosted out of the shadow cabinet in the lead up to the election because she was the Shadow Secretary of State for DCMS, Digital Culture, Media and Sport. Again, a bit like DEFRA, just easier to shorten them names. But she got voted out of there a little bit before the election, and I didn't think we'd see her again, but there she is. She's back, and it's a very good appointment. She knows what she's doing. She was instrumental in the saving of her local football club, Wigan Athletic, when they were going to go bankrupt. She was instrumental in stopping that from happening. So, she's not afraid of getting her hands dirty at a local level in terms of sporting things. And the Department of Culture, Media and Sport is sort of all of the nice things that we all like.
Yeah.
So like films, TV, sport. It's all under that brief. And I think she'll be very good. Again, varied. In terms of her position, she's been an MP since 2010. And she's had jobs in the Department of Education, Energy. She was a shadow minister in the Cabinet Office, which is essentially a minister without portfolio, for 2 years. And then she was shadow foreign secretary for a couple of months in 2020. I think at the end of Corbyn's start of Starmer era, she assumed that job mainly because they would have struggled to find somebody else to do the job. And then she was the shadow minister for international development until she took this job, which she was from the start of this year up till when she got booted out just before the election.
Yeah. Likable person, likable face. Just look at her cute little face. She's well happy to be in that position, isn't she?
Exactly, and she is very much an Angela Rayner type figure. She's she's state educated, not from an affluent background. People feel like they can connect with her.
Yeah. Right, so we're done with the main sort of ones. The next one is the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, and it's the Right Honourable Hilary Benn. Leeds. Which one? I can't remember because he used to be Leeds South, but it's not Leeds South no more, is it?
Oh God, where is it? Because what's her name?
The border's changed.
The Chancellor Rachel Reeves is Leeds West, I think. Hillary Benn. Where are you, Hillary Benn? Where are you on my list, Hillary Benn? Hillary Benn, Leeds South.
Oh, so he's still Leeds South. I thought the borders had changed.
No, Hillary Benn is a good appointment. There has never been a Labour government without a member of the Benn family in the shadow cabinet.
Nice. So what does the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland do?
The Secretary of State for Northern Ireland is essentially in an important job because of the Good Friday Agreement and because of the power sharing agreement in place. They essentially are responsible for making sure that Stormont, the government chamber for Northern Ireland, gets up and running and works essentially as it should. So he will be instrumental in making sure that the Sinn Féin government stay in government, and that because of the way that power sharing exists, both sides have to agree to go into government together. So he'll be instrumental in making sure that that happens, essentially.
Next is the Secretary of State for Scotland, so something similar. He is Ian Murray.
Again, very, very similar. He will be up at Holyrood, making sure that the Scottish government and Scottish Parliament essentially is working well. But this is different to Northern Ireland because in Northern Ireland there is no Labour Party, essentially. Whereas in Scotland you've got Anna Sarwar and Scottish Labour. So he won't have to be on the ground making sure that these things are running. He will essentially be working really closely with Scottish Labour leader Anna Sarwar to make sure that, one, the Scottish cases and problems are presented to the Prime Minister at the Cabinet table, and that Labour can really capitalise on the gains that they made off the SNP at the election.
And they had quite a good running did Labour up in Scotland as well, so that might make his job a little bit easier for him. Next up, Secretary of State for Wales is Joe Stevens.
Again, a very important member in terms of the cabinet because all of these officers they call them officers of state for the union, ensure that there's representation for basically every part of the United Kingdom. And she will be important because she's essentially the go-between between Westminster and the Senedd, the Welsh Parliament. But again, there is a Labour presence in Wales, so she will be responsible, the go-between between the government and Welsh Labour, essentially.
Go-between.
Go-between.
Next up, Lucy Powell. She is the Lord President of the Council and leader of the House of Commons.
Lord President of the Council is essentially Penny Mordaunt's old job. You remember her holding the sword at the coronation. So any ceremonial state occasions and things like that, it'll fall on her essentially to run those in terms of head of the Privy Council and all the old institutions like that.
And then leader of the House of Commons. Pretty simple. She's the leader of the House of Commons.
So exactly the same role as Penny Mordaunt fulfilled, and Facebook dads loved her for it.
The next one is mouthful, the Right Honourable Baroness Smith of Basildon, and she is the Lord Privy Seal and the leader of the House of Lords.
Feel like that explains itself because even I'm not too sure what the Lord Privy Seal is.
Fantastic. Next one is the Right Honourable Sir Alan Campbell, and he's the Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasury.
Yeah, he makes sure that the money's coming and going as it should and that nobody's spending money like the former Labour government.
The next one is the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. It's Darren Jones.
Similar job to the previous fella. He makes sure that the money's coming and going, and he'll work with Rachel Reeves when she's assembling her budget. And essentially, he will be running the rule over places like the OBR, the Office of Budget Responsibility, who look at government spending and publish reports and independent work saying this is good, this is bad, maybe you should stop, maybe keep going.
We've got the Attorney General, Richard Hermer. Hermer?
Don't know. But this is a strange one because this was Emily Thornberry's shadow position. She was expected to take it. It hasn't been given to her, but instead, Keir Starmer has decided to give it to a barrister, essentially, a KC, which is good because the Attorney General looks around the laws of the land and certain things like that. So when you're looking at things like that, I suppose you want somebody that's well versed in law and things like that. So this, like most of the cabinet appointments, very sensible.
Absolutely. Next one, you recognise his face? Yes, of course you do. It's Sir Patrick Vallance, KCB, and he is the Minister of State in the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology.
He'll be working with Peter Kyle, but I suspect, due to what we know him from, he'll be focusing on the health side of science. So new vaccines, new treatments for all sorts of different things will essentially be Sir Patrick Vallance's job, just like it was when he wasn't in government, but he was working very closely with the vaccine rollout for coronavirus. Next slide, please.
And the last one, James Timpson, OBE. He's the Minister of State in the Ministry of Justice.
This has been a big talking point, which normally it wouldn't be because a Minister of State is not a big job. But he's been given the role of Minister of State in the Ministry of Justice, which is a good appointment. James Timpson. Do you know Timpson's, the locksmiths?
Yeah.
That's his company. And
Right.
Timpson's, the locksmiths, are massively into employing ex-convicts and giving them work. What?
Do you remember John Burko?
Yeah, he's going to be in Fallout. Yeah.
Just seen it now.
Yeah, I've just seen it myself.
Speaker is to start as a robot speaker in the Fallout 4 London mod.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. Right. Well, we will quickly move on.
That's the cabinet, everybody.
That's the cabinet. Sorry it took so long. Yeah, sorry it took so long. Callum can talk for fucking donkey's years.
Yes, he can. Sorry.
Right. Something that he's not going to talk too much about is the next bit. So this basically is the outline of the 10 policies that Labour had put in place that was going to get Britain's future back. So this was from the 27th of May. So this is before the election. So we're just going to quickly go over it. See how they're going to do it, blah, blah, blah. And if they've started doing it yet. So the first one is to deliver 2 million more NHS appointments a year. So they said that how they were going to do it is that Labour's policy was to increase the number of NHS appointments. We will see NHS staff paid extra to work evenings and weekends in order to tackle the backlog, and will also use spare capacity in private healthcare providers to clear the NHS backlog. Free at the point of use, as well as recruiting 8,500 new NHS mental health staff. We will bring down waits for cancer appointments with a Fit for the Future fund, doubling the number of state-of-the-art MRI and CT scanners in the NHS to ensure early diagnosis. Under the Tories, the NHS waiting list had tripled, and drastic action needed to be taken to get patients seen and receive the care they need. Have I started it?
Yeah, so again, getting the junior doctors around the table will be a big thing because that obviously puts more staff then into these departments. and the using of private hospitals to sort of backdoor NHS appointments in is already happening and has been happening for a little bit now. But they're going to roll that out across the country, and they've already got the framework in place to be able to do that, which they've taken. They've taken essentially the planning that the hospitals that are currently doing it, they've taken the planning from them and said, right, there's no reason why we can't do this at every hospital in the country. So the plans are there, ready to go.
So the next up is set up Great British Energy, a new publicly owned British energy company. So we've touched this a little bit earlier on when we're going through the government and the cabinet benches. So what this means is that Labour's policy offer includes a green prosperity plan to cut energy bills and creating good jobs in every region. A Labour government will invest in homegrown clean power, cut bills, create jobs, and give us independence from dictators like Putin, paid for in part by a proper windfall tax on oil and gas giants.
Yeah, not much movement on this yet from Ed Miliband. However, he's going to the COP29 summit, which is rare for the minister for the department to be going. Normally, they'd use a junior minister to go in their place, and the Prime Minister would be there as well. But the actual minister is going to try and establish a way that we can work with other countries to support our green ambitions. And in terms of setting up Great British Energy, that is on the way, but there's all sorts of legislation and planning needed to put that in place. So we might not see that for a little bit yet. Next.
You catching me out. Right, so close private education tax loopholes to improve schools. So how this is going to happen is the private schools currently benefit from an unfair tax break that means they avoid paying VAT on fees. Through closing these loopholes, Labour will raise vital money needed to improve standards in stretched state schools with more teachers. This funding will also help pay for mental health support staff in every school, working to boost the well-being of young people, many of whom still suffering from the effects of lockdown. So this and the NHS one that deal with the backing of mental health and things like that are big advocates for me and Callum and this channel.
Absolutely. And you've got a real argument raging about this policy, because people are saying, well, why shouldn't we send our children to private school, and if we're paying for it, then it should be better, the education should be better. But the counter argument to that is that the level of education in state schools is so low that comparatively state schools have gone from, so private schools were here, state schools were here, and that gap has just been growing and growing and growing. So what Labour have said is that in order to retain this, they need to bring private schools down a little in order to bring state schools up a little bit, but private schools will always have that edge on state schools. So
yeah,
you're not actually losing out on much at all. If you still want to send your children to a private school, then that opportunity will be there. You won't be losing out on much at all, but it is a way of raising the money needed without taxing the people themselves, without taxing your wage packet. It's a way of raising the money in order to bring the basic provision of state schools back up to where it needs to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I sound like a politician there, didn't I?
Next one is to bring back the family doctor and improve local NHS care. So how they're going to do this is at the heart of Labour's health policy is a commitment to the NHS, a neighbourhood health service, and as much as the National Health Service. Labour will cut red tape, freeing up GPs so they have more time to see patients. We will ensure patients can see the same GP each appointment if they choose to, and we will trial neighbourhood health centres, bringing together family doctors, district nurses, care workers, physiotherapists and mental health specialists under one roof.
Yeah, so this is what Labour have been saying throughout all of the campaign and even before. The problem with the NHS is that currently A&E waiting times are huge. Waiting times for an ambulance are huge. Why is that? Because you need if you're going to A&E, you need the care immediately at the time. However, Labour are saying that a long-winded way, admittedly, but a way of bringing those waiting lists down would be to get GPs more in the community, get them up and running, get more GP appointments in order to prevent problems before they become problems.
Yeah, absolutely a massive thing. Next one is to stop water bosses' bonuses when their companies harm the environment. So what this means is that Labour will clamp down on water companies that harm the environment and pollute our rivers with automatic and severe fines, as well as new powers to regulate to block bonuses until water bosses have cleaned up the filth. For the most serious cases, Labour will allow the regulator to pursue criminal charges against water bosses.
And this is massive. The scandal's been going on for a while now that they are literally pumping raw sewage into our rivers and seas as a means of getting rid of it. And in terms of action against this, the Conservative government didn't really do anything. They were allowed to post record bonuses for their CEOs and higher-ups last year. And in terms of Labour saying they're going to stop that, what it means is that there is some sort of punishment for doing it. And although this policy, the problem I've got with it is that it doesn't say how they're going to reverse the damage that's already been done, it's a good way of stopping further damage from being created.
And is it also another way to sort of pull money back into the government? Like, is that money going to come back into the government so we can sort of lower taxes a little bit?
So if they stop the bonuses, one of two things will happen. Either that money will be spent by the water companies in reversing some of the action that they've already taken, or that money will be then subsumed back into the Treasury, back into the public purse, and will be able to be spent on other things, which would be good.
Next up is end hotel use for asylum seekers. So how they'll do that is, they've said, by Rishi Sunak promised to end asylum hotels use, but instead the number had hit a record high, costing the British taxpayer an eye-watering £8 million a day. Labour's policy to secure Britain's borders will see the introduction of more staff to process claims and return people to safe countries, clearing the asylum backlog, and new cross-border police units smashing criminal people smuggling gangs by using counter-terror style tactics.
Yeah, it needs to happen. This is one of the policies that any government, whether it would be Conservative, Labour, whatever coming in, this needed to happen. But in terms of the way that they've worded how they're going to do it, I'm not entirely sold on the premise of that policy, because this isn't going to be a massive sweeping change that can happen in one night. This is going to be individual hotels on an individual basis. Do you know how long that's going to take?
Yeah, it's going to be a long time. I think Callum's just falling asleep on us there.
Sorry, no, I'm just trying to find out. I'm just trying to find out who Donald Trump's new running mate is.
So next up is great support for victims of violence against women. So how we'll do this is Labour will create a requirement for a rape unit in every police force, specialists in every 999 control room, and fast-track courts and legal advice for rape victims. This will mean that early opportunities for prevention and protection are not missed. And we'll follow up with requiring police forces to target dangerous repeat offenders with the tactics and tools normally reserved for counter-terror and serious organised crime investigations, getting serious perpetrators off our streets. We will also put specialists in the court system to support rape victims, meaning that victims are given better support at every stage. For me, I think this is quite good, because the length of time between when it happens and when it comes to court is causing so much anxiety and stress on the victims, and it needs to be just done, dusted straight away up, so they can don't have to bring that trauma back up, because there's no point in going through the system of like getting help for that trauma and that stress that you had prior, and then like a year, 2-3 years down the line, they're having that all brought back up because someone's pleaded not guilty, and having to go through everything again and then go back through the system for your trauma, your stress and stuff like that. So just quicker sentencing for it, better guidelines for a lot of stuff, because the guidelines are a bit shit at the moment, and making sure that people get sent away for the crime that they committed.
Yeah, well, exactly. But the problem with this, right, is that this is one of those policies that's in direct contradiction to another policy. Because I appreciate that Labour have said that things are worse in terms of the prison situation than what they thought it would be before they took office, right? That's fine. But that then means that this cannot start on day one.
No.
Because you cannot say we're going to give out tougher sentences on one hand and then say on the other hand, we're going to have to start releasing prisoners because there are too many in prisons at the moment.
I think personally that this isn't going to be a first term like promise. I'd say that this is going to be a second term promise.
I think so, but I think that they can start putting the framework in place in the first term to support the actual heft of the policy later on. So I think in terms of the guidance, that's something that can be changed now. You know, the only thing that can't be changed now is the length of prison terms and things like that, I think, because they have to deal with the first problem before they change that. But they can put preventative, that was a big word, measures in now in order to stop that being such a problem further down the line.
Yeah, they need to sort stuff out now. I think literally going through the sentencing and the guidelines and stuff like that, it needs to be a massive change straight away, because there's so many people getting away with absolute massive crimes, and then you've got Joe Blogs with a petty crime that's getting sent away for 5 years.
You've got Joe Blogs. Somebody should arrest Joe Blogs, to be honest with you.
Next up is the Great British Railways, so putting passengers first and establishing Great British Railways. So what this means is that Labour's plan will fix our railways for the benefit of passengers and the taxpayer. It can usher in a decade of growth, innovation and service improvement, with the railways playing their part in Britain's national renewal. Labour will create an undefined and simplified governance structure that places passengers at the heart of the goal, objectives and incentives for the railway, and to bring train operators under public ownership and control. Public ownership for our railways is about the practical need to deliver better services where they have failed.
Yeah, this is a good policy if it works. Renationalising the railways is a good idea because it means that the trains are there for the passengers. They're not there to make money. Obviously, they will make money, and it's her job to make sure this all goes well. That was very nice. Well done. They will make money, but then the good thing about that is that money doesn't then go into the CEO's pocket. It doesn't then go into the pockets of the operators or wherever. The money that the trains make when they're renationalised goes back into the railways.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of shit that's going on with them, and I don't understand why. For example, when was it? Went to Scotland at the start of the year to go watch our good friend Alessandra from the Euros of last year from Norway.
Yeah.
And the day after,
not from the Euros. Not from the Euros.
Eurovision.
Yeah.
Went up there, but no issue at all. Yeah, okay, you get a little bit of a delay in the line, no problem at all, but you're on the train and there's no stress about it. You know, it's just delayed by 10 minutes? Not bad. But then on the way back down, we've got the stress of getting from Glasgow to Edinburgh. you've got trains that are being cancelled left, right, and centre. Then you get all the way to Edinburgh. When you get trains again that are being cancelled left, right, and centre that are starting in Newcastle, and it's just there like, well, how am I going to get from Edinburgh to Newcastle? But then, like a couple hours later, they're running again. So then you've got even more people trying to get on the same train, and it's just a bit of a massive kerfuffle. But if we had some proper privatisation of the railways,
no. Opposite of privatisation, nationalisation.
Nationalisation, that's the one.
Oh, damn.
Nationalisation of the railways, it'll be much, much better. You'll be able to get from A to B easier and cheaper.
Yes. And what it will also mean is that things like the RMT strike, once the initial, they are going to have to get around the table, and they are going to have to agree a fair deal for train drivers at the minute, because what's going to happen is that you'll see train companies get nationalised, but not all of them all at once.
Yeah.
So certain drivers will still be working with poor contracts, and they will need looking at by the government for the short term. So they will still have to get around the table with the RMT. But what it will mean then is that eventually, once all of the rail companies are back under public control, essentially the government are then answerable to everybody that works on the railways. And what that means is that the government can give them a pay rise or can give them a pay cut. But governments don't like giving pay cuts because it makes them look bad. So what it's going to do in the long run, hopefully, is cut out the need to strike.
Yeah, hopefully so. Next, right. Well, talking about money, make the minimum wage a genuine living wage. Living wage. Short but sweet.
Sorry.
Labour will strengthen the minimum wage that employers must pay to ensure it reflects the cost of living. Easy.
Bang. And what's a good way of doing that? Bring down inflation. Because the more I'm going to do this again, I'm going to do the hands. The hands are coming back. This is inflation. This is the living wage. The living wage stays roughly the same. But the more you bring down inflation, you bring the living wage up a notch, it's going to feel like you've got more money in your pocket. Even though you might have like an extra quid in your pocket, if everything costs less, that quid's going to go a lot further. Oh, I did the double hands then. It's like I feel like I'm on Newsnight.
Let's have a look. Where are we? There we are. Right. So, where's the living wage gone?
What? I'm looking at it. What about? What?
So the current rates at the moment, as of April 2024, for 21 and over, it's £11.44.
Yeah, it's not brilliant.
Where's the living wage? It says it's on the pit. It says national minimum wage and national living wage rates.
So if you want to be really boring like me, you'll find the graph of the wage and price increases from the Office of National Statistics, where it basically shows you that in terms of inflation, the average weekly earnings has dropped. Christ, that's a terrifying graph.
What I also love as well, though, is that they've changed the cap. So it used to be 25 and over, then it was 23 and over, and now it's 21 and over.
Yeah.
So it used to be 21 to 24, then it was 21 to 22, and now it's just 18 to 20.
And like a very boring thing that many people won't look at was the graph that I'm looking at now, which is, it's got a very long and very boring name, but I will explain it. It's the rolling regression of effective wages on output price proxy manufacturing. Basically, how much more gets made when people are paid more.
Yeah.
And the result is pretty obvious. You know, at every point there's been a wage increase, the productivity has gone up, which brings inflation down, which brings money in the treasury up, which means there's more money in the country. So actually the short-term hit of paying more for a minimum wage is well worth it when the money starts to come in from all of the things that it benefits.
And then last but not least on the list is free breakfast clubs in every primary school in England.
I love breakfast. Come on.
Notice it says England.
Because the devolved administrations are technically responsible for their own education systems.
So what this means is that Labour has a plan to improve school attendances that includes the introduction of breakfast clubs for all primary school children in England. This would be the first step on the road to a modern childcare system, so every child has the best start at school and parents have more choices about work. Easy peasy. You know, the longer you can keep a child in school, the better someone's job can be, the more tax that they will have to pay, and you get more money in your pocket.
Pretty much. It's pretty much spot on. I mean, I don't think there's much more that needs to be said other than drawing attention to the fact that child poverty is the highest that it's ever been. General poverty is the highest it's ever been. Inflation's really high. People might not be able to afford to give their children a decent breakfast. So this is really important from not just a government perspective or a PR perspective for the government, but actually just being a nice person perspective. Children need breakfast. Parents are now, thanks to the state of the economy, and you can blame the Conservative government for that, you can blame worldwide factors for that, whatever. People are now no longer in a position where breakfast is guaranteed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So as much as we can do to help to change that, and not to get all Michael Jackson, we are the world wanky sort of shit. Children are our future, guys. We got to help them. You know?
Callum. Shit, I missed.
Just grazed my ear.
Well, after all this news, right, is Donald Trump got shot.
He did get shot. He got shot a bit.
Is it a conspiracy theory?
No, he definitely did get shot.
No, I mean, he got shot, but normally the Secret Service is supposed to protect the head of the person they're protecting. They didn't, because we've got that great shot of him with his fist in the air, face center of the photo with a waving flag in the background.
That assassination attempt has made Donald Trump the president of the United States.
It has, and it's a massive conspiracy theory.
He will win now because of his reaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what I like about that is that just before he's doing his whole fight, USA thing, the microphone does pick up, let me get my shoes. Let me get my shoes.
Yeah.
It's like, right.
How did his shoes fall off, though?
I don't know.
It's not like he, out of the way.
He dropped down and just took his shoes off.
He just ducked out of the way.
And just took his shoes. I've got to take these off.
Yeah, so Donald Trump has now got a massive, graze in his ear because luckily he moved his head slightly to the side before the shot was taken, preventing the bullet going through the back of his head and into his, just clipping his ear. JD Vance is 39 years old.
JD Vance is an Ohio senator, yeah?
He's a former venture capitalist, will become vice president if Mr. Trump wins November's election.
Obviously, we're all very sad about not having Mike Pence anymore, but it did turn out that old Mike was a little bit of a turncoat when he turned up at Joe Biden's inauguration without Trump. That's not a great look, is it?
Yeah, so it's a bit strange. He got shot, and now he's going to be the president of the United States of America. Funny how these things come around, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we're watching Joe Biden get worse and worse, and I genuinely do feel sorry for the man. I don't think he should be doing what he's doing anymore. He's clearly not well. He's clearly forgetful. He's just an old man. He should be at home, put his feet up, have a brew, and watch Bargain Hunt. You know, he shouldn't be running one of the world's powerhouses, the biggest country in the world.
I'm trying to figure out what happened with the king and queen today.
Well, what?
They got pulled away. There was a false alarm. Hang on, I'll read it. The king and queen were briefly pulled away from an engagement in Jersey after a false alarm. The queen was said to be eating an ice cream at an expo event when a member of the royal entourage said something to her in private. She and the king were then ushered away and taken into the nearby hotel in the island's capital, St. Helier.
Ma'am, that's a bomb in your ice cream. Ma'am, I don't have the change to pay the man for the ice cream.
What did you say, dear?
It said he doesn't have the change.
All you had to do was ask. Here's a 20. It's got my husband's face on it.
Oh, this got weird, didn't it?
Well, it used to be her going, "Look, Philip, I'm a stamp." Petition for that to be in the show reel next week.
Yes. Oh shit, man!
I'm gonna clip that as well. As you shouted yes, and I go, oh shit! Oh. Keep it going.
I'm a stamp.
Philip, look, I'm a stamp.
It's the voice.
Oh, Philip.
Oh, we used to be a serious podcast.
No, the serious is gone now. The serious is long gone. We had the chance to try and make us millions with the election that was going on by having an orthodox stance at the election, and we fucked it. We fucked it.
We did well.
We've got random people kicking off at each other on our ad posts.
Yeah, we do. That's really funny.
Reform UK.
We're actually enablers of Nigel Farage.
We had one person that was kicking off with us saying, you shouldn't be getting people to pay ads and this, that, blah, blah, blah. You do know that I paid for the ad, right? I paid for the ad because I want people to come to visit the Facebook page.
The web page.
I paid. Wow, your background's like having your face right now.
It's because there's no light on my screen.
Oh yeah. Right. Anyway, I think we're done now. There's nothing else to talk about. There's nothing else in the world that's important to talk about at all. Everything's done.
What about the football?
Yeah. Oh,
we talk about football.
Right, cool. Cheers, guys. We do not have to talk about football.
Fine. We will not talk about the football.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
We just talk about football and you lose.
I'm an Ireland fan. That's all the time.
Well, I think that's it. We've annoyed you so much with all the politics. We promise that the next one is not going to be politics. It's going to be more about the news and what's going on and back to the usual shenanigans of fun and laughs and
it'll be politics.
And probably politics. Right. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we will see you all next time. So, cheers.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.